Hello, and welcome back to our second demo portion of the practice problems. I want to skip five. Reason why is five is insanely hard, and they didn't give us enough information to figure out what their payables turnover was and all that stuff. So we're just going to skip that. Don't even worry about it. I want to get into number six, right? So this is key. Right here, this problem actually is because we're trying to figure out our actual cash collection. Okay, this is something you'll do out there in the real world. Um, so let me just show you. I'm going to set it up a little differently than the template is, but that's okay. Um, if you write if you follow along with what I'm doing beneath that, you'll be just fine. So they give us sales information, right? They give us, bear with me. They start out with January, right? They give us January, and they say we have January, February, and we have March. Okay, and they give us the sales figures. So March sales are $241,000. February is 218,000, and January is 198,000. Okay, so we got to figure out when we're going to collect this, right? And if we just look at the credit collection, 55% of the sales are collected in the month of the sale, 30% collected in the month after the sale, 15% collected 2 months after the sale. So if we start off with January, that's very easy for us to do, right? January, February, and March. Okay, so we got to figure out how much cash we're going to collect in January. Very easy to do, right? We take January sales of 198,000 and just multiply it by 55%, right? Very easy to do. Very super easy. And we run it through a calculator. Yes, I'll use a calculator because again, it's way too late to be doing this in my head. 198,000 times 0.55 gives me $108 or $108,900, right? But then I can then go through and say, okay, well, in February, I'm going to collect 30% of January sales. And in March, I'm going to collect 15%, right? That's easy, right? But we have a little hiccup here. They give us information on November and December. They tell us nothing about the sales. They tell us what the receivables are, and they tell us the collection ratio, right, per month. So if you notice, it says that as of December 31st, we have accounts receivable of $82,000. They tell us that $52,000 of this is December's, and November's is they don't tell us, right? So we have to calculate that. So if we take the 82,000, which is the total receivable, minus December's 52,000, we have $30,000, which represent November's sales, right? We need to figure out what the sales are. Well, in order to do that, we need to think, where are we? Well, we're right here in January. We're in January. This is 2 months. January is 2 months from November, right? So if we divide it by 15%, we see that our sales figure for November is $200,000. Okay? We can do the same thing with November or with December. We know that we've already collected 55% of December sales, right? 30% of those sales will be collected in January. 15% of those sales will be collected in 2 months after the sale, which would be February. So we still have 45% of this that needs to be collected, right? So if we divide here, we could see that our sales for December are actually 115,000. I apologize, I can't read my handwriting. So 52,000 divided by 0.45. Yep. $115,555, and we'll say 56 cents. We'll round up a penny. Okay? So we have the sales, right, for November and December. So since we have their total sales figures, we can apply this collection period to those totals, okay? So in January, I'm going to collect, let's go with December next, okay? I know that my sales for December are, tell you what, let's round just to make it easier for us a little bit. So we'll say December sales are $115,556, right? I'm in January. It's the month after the sale. I'm going to collect 30% of this. So if I take my 115,556 and multiply it by 0.3, I get 34,667. I'm rounding up. I know it's 34,668 or $66.80. I'm just dropping off the 80, okay? Let's do the same thing with November. Okay? In November, my total sales were $200,000. I know that in November, that's 2 months after the sale, so I'm going to collect 15% of this, which ends up being $30,000. So the total cash I'm going to collect in January is going to be 55% of January sales, which is $108,900, plus 30% of December sales, which is 34667, plus 15% of November sales, which is $30,000. The cash that I'm going to collect in January is going to be $173,567. Okay? So let's look at February. I got to calculate February. Okay? So, am I going to collect any of November sales in February? No. Right? Because February is 3 months after November. I've collected all my sales, right? Based on what they told me on what my collection is. Okay? I'm going to collect January sales in February. Collect a portion of them. I'm going to collect 30%, right? So in February, I'm going to take $198,000. Now, I'm going to change colors here just to make it easier on us. Now, I'm going to multiply my $198,000 by 30%. So if I take 198,000 times 0.3, gives me 59.4. Okay. In December, am I going to collect anything from February? I sure am. It's 2 months after the sale. February is 2 months away from December. So that means that I'm going to collect 15% of December sales. So I take 115,556 times 15%. I end up with 17,333. I'm just rounding off just to keep it easier on us, okay? February. Am I going to collect any other sales in February? Am I going to collect cash from any other sales in February? I sure am. I'm going to collect February, right? So in February, my sales are $218,000 times my 55%, because that's what I collect in the month of the sale. And I take my 218,000 times my 0.55, end up with, come right here, 119,900. So how much cash am I going to collect just in February? Well, that's easy. I'm going to collect my $119,900 from February sales plus 15% of December sales, which is the 17,333. Plus, I'm going to collect 30% of January sales, which is the 59,400. And if my math's right, that should equal 187,633. Okay, so that's the cash I collect in February. That's my February cash receipts. Okay, now we got to do March, and I'm gonna change color again on us just to hopefully make it a little easier. Okay, so November, I'm done. Right? I already collected all of November sales at the beginning of January, right? But let's look at December. Do I have to collect anything from December in March? No, not at all, right? I'm not going to collect anything. Why? Because March is 3 months away from December. I've already collected all my December sales by the end of February, so there's nothing there. However, I am going to collect 15% of January sales. So if I take my 198,000 times my 0.15, gives me 2,850. That means in March, I'm collecting 15% of January sales. Okay, so if I make a bunch of sales in January, it's going to take me 3 months to collect the cash on all those sales. Okay, now let's go down to February because it's the month after the sale. In February, I sold $218,000. Since it's the month after the sale, I'm going to collect 30%. Okay. So if I take 30% of 218,000, that gives me $65,400. Okay. Now, in March, am I going to collect anything else? Well, sure. I'm going to collect 55% of March's sales. So in March, my sales are $241,000 times my 55%. Okay. So if I take the sales of March, 241,000 times 0.55, that gives me $132,550. Okay, so how much cash am I going to collect in March? Well, that's easy. I'm going to collect the $132,550 of March's sales. I'm going to collect 30% of February sales, which end up being $65,400. Plus, I'm going to collect 15% of January sales, which is $2,850. That gives me cash collections in the month of March of $200,800. Okay, so what is left to collect? Now, the problem doesn't ask us that, but we can very easily figure that out, right? To figure out what's left, well, in February, am I going to have anything to collect in April? Well, I sure am. In April, that's 2 months after February. So I'm going to have 15% of that to collect. Okay? So if I take the February sales of $218,000 times 0.5 or 0.15, which is the 15%, I end up with $32,700. Okay? What about in March? Or what about March's sales? March's sales, well, I've collected 55% of those, so that means 45% are still outstanding. So at the end of the March, $241,000 times 0.45, because that's still what needs to be collected, equals 108,450. Okay? So if I add these two up, this is going to give me my AR as of March. Okay? Which is the 108,450 plus the 32,700. Oh, that's not right. There we go. Which equals 141,150. Okay? Now, how does this relate? Let's say, for example, that I say, hey, tell me what April, May, and June cash collections are. Okay? Just like they did in this problem. Well, we have to say that, hey, the accounts receivable as of March 31st is 141,150. And of this 141,150, 108,450 represents March's sales. We can figure out what February's sales were. We know what March's sales are. They obviously would have to give us April, May, and June. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. Made sense in my head, but if not, just let me know and we'll figure it out. All right, so the next one we have is problem 7, I believe, in yours. My handout's a little different. It gives us the credit card sales for April, May, and June. They give us credit card purchases, and they give us all kind of wages, taxes, expenses, interest, equipment purchases, and whatnot. Okay, I'm just going to go through one of these, or 1 month, and I think you should be able to do the rest from there. So they tell us that, and we'll just take April's information. Okay, So they give us the credit sales, which end up being $313,000. They give us the credit card purchases, or the credit purchases. That's important because these are our payables, right? 121, 100. They give us the cash disbursements, which are the wages, and I'm just going to say etc., but that's the wages, taxes, and expenses, which are 43,300. They give us the interest, which is 10,300, and they give us equipment purchases, which is $73,000. Okay, this is everything we do in April. Okay, so what we need to do, they tell us that the company predicts that 5% of the credit sales will never be collected. 45% of its sales will be collected in the month of the sale. The remaining 50% will be collected in the month following the sale. Okay. They tell us that credit card purchases will be paid in the month following the purchase. They say on March 28th, credit sales were $183,000. Credit purchases were $123,000. Using the information, complete the following cash budget. Now, they're missing a piece of the pie here, are they not? Because we know when we pay the credit, but what about the cash disbursements? Do we pay all those cash disbursements in the month of the sale, or do we do it in the month following the sale? So what we need to figure out is, when do they pay this? So being that it says, and again, we need to make an assumption here, okay? So the assumption is going to be that cash disbursements are going to be paid in the month of the sale, or in the month that they're incurred, okay? So that means the wages, taxes, expenses, interest, and equipment purchases, we pay for those in the month they occur, okay? So they do not give us any information either about what their beginning cash balance is, okay? But we can figure that out. No, we can't, because they only give us the credit card sales. They give us the credit card purchases. They do not give us enough information to figure out what the beginning cash balance is, which is pretty important information. They definitely should have told us that. So let's start with April. Okay, we'll just do all of April. Bear with me here for 1 second. Okay, I had to get rid of that, sorry. All right, so let's look at April. Okay, so we know what our cash receipts are, right? Say cash receipts. Okay, so they tell us that in May, credit card sales were $183,000. Okay, so we know that 45% of sales are collected month after. Okay, we know that. And we know that March's sales were $183,000. Okay, so very easy to do. We know that 45% of the sales were collected in, or let's do it this way. We're going to take 183. I'm going to multiply that by the 0.05. It's 915, okay? So I'm going to take 183,000 minus the 915. Okay? That 915 represents the 5% that is uncollected, right? Right off the bat, we're not going to get that. So we're going to say 182,0850 or 085. So we're going to collect 45% of this, right? Or that's the sales, hold on, times 50%, because 50% of the sales are collected in the month of the sale. And again, this is all March. So if I take that 182,085, that means that $91,040 around and say 43 will be collected in March. Okay. So in April, I'm going to collect March's sales, which is basically 91,043, because I already took my 5% off the top, saying we're not going to collect it, so don't even worry about it. Okay. So in April, I'm going to collect 91,043. In April, I'm going to collect 50% of April's sales. Okay, I'm going to do it the same way. Right off the bat, 5% of it's not going to be collected. So I'm going to take the $313,000 of April sales, which equals 15,650. So let me change my color here. So now I'm going to do April sales, right? They tell us that 313 are the sales. 15,650, 5% that's not going to be collected. Equals 297,350 times 50% of that equals 148,678. Okay, so right off the bat, my cash receipts for April is going to be the 148,675. I'm sorry. That's a 5. Plus the 91,043, which gives me not the right amount. So that gives me the 239,718. And all I did was just added these. Okay. Now we're going to figure out what our cash disbursements are. Okay. So I'm going to go back to using yellow. Say cash disbursements. Right? So they tell us that in March, we had credit card purchases of $123,000. So credit card purchases equal $123,000. they tell us that credit card purchases are paid in the month following the purchase. So if in March, if I paid $123,000 in credit card purchases, guess what? I'm going to pay those in April, the following month. So 123. Okay. So what you would do in May, we would pay for April's purchases. And so forth and so forth, okay? So then we have our taxes, expenses, and interest, which end up our wages, taxes, and expenses. I'm just going to say wages end up being the 43,300. The interest ends up being the 10,300. And that's a 10. And then we do the equipment, right? Because we bought some equipment in the month of April, which was 73,000. So if we add up all our cash disbursements, which would be the 123,000 plus the 43,300 plus the 10,300 plus the 73,000, we get 249,600, right? Now, they didn't tell us what the beginning cash balance was. That would be important to know, okay? So we could see here right off the bat that we're in the hole, right? We paid out 249,600, but we only took in the month of April 239,718. That means we're short 9,882. Now, what this problem doesn't ask is for financing, right? They don't tell us what the minimum required balance is, or the minimum required balance that the company likes to have on hand. So that means in May, we're starting off in the hole $9,882, okay? However, in the real world, the company would say, you know what? We always want to begin the month with maybe like $10,000 on hand, okay? If our cash balance falls below $10,000, we're going to tap into our short-term line of credit. Okay, great. So we would have to do that here. We would say, okay, we need to borrow. We basically need to borrow $19,882. That covers the deficit for the month of April, plus puts us in a good position for May. Okay, so that's how you do the cash collections. I've been rambling on here for a while. So the next problem I think you can do on your own, just recognizing if it's a use or a source of cash and the amount. We did that in class and discussed that in class as well. And let's see, cash flow. In our next video, we'll come back and do number 11. I think you'll definitely need a little bit more direction on that. So please tune back in for that video.